Just give me 1 second to make sure it's actually working.
Yep, let me know when I'm ready to start.
Is that link not working? Motherfucker. Let's just. Okay. Yeah, I think we're just about there. I'm just gonna send everyone one more email just in case folks that didn't get the link, and then jump on.
Sounds good.
No.
It does say here on the corner that it's live on the custom live streaming service.
Yep, that's YouTube. Basically, in order to schedule on YouTube, you have to create a custom service.
Okay.
So that's that. So we are good to go. Whenever you're ready, we kick it off.
Perfect. All right, hey everyone, thanks for coming. I know you all could.
It does say here on the corner that it's live on the custom live streaming service.
Yep, that's YouTube. Basically, in order to schedule on YouTube, you have to create a custom service.
Okay.
So that's that. So we are good to go.
All right, did that just repeat? Can you hear me?
Aaron's on mute, but I think we can hear you. Yeah, you can go ahead.
Perfect. Awesome. So thanks everyone for coming. I'm sure you have other places that you could be, so we definitely appreciate you spending time with us. I'm going to make a few announcements, and then I'm going to hand it over to tonight's speaker. Myself, I'm Eric Frank. I'm the head of admissions at Promotable. And at Promotable, our mission is to close the data skills gap and help everyone get the skills they need to be successful in today's data-driven economy. We do this through events like tonight's, where we invite practitioners from industry-leading companies. In addition, we have a series of workshops and classes. All of our practitioners and speakers are like tonight's, and the classes are really simple, and they're as little as 5 hours per week. We have a couple courses coming up, data analytics coming up in the next month, and a Python course that's starting as soon as the 8th of June. So definitely check us out there. You'll learn some great skills to turn data into insights and to solve business problems. You'll also learn to confidently navigate and manipulate large data sets and visualize them and communicate your insights to stakeholders with powerful dashboards. And again, the data analytics class is a little bit shorter, and the Python class is also around the same amount of time, but you can check that out on our website. Let's see here. And in terms of how to reach us, we have a Slack community with over 8,000 members. You'll all receive an invitation to join that community, where you can connect with other business tech professionals, share resumes, best practices, and more. You can also check us out on the standards, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And definitely check out the YouTube page that you're looking at right now. It definitely has an entire library of past events, and we'll have future events on there as well. Thanks again for joining for the evening, and we have a quick video before the speaker starts.
Analytics play a crucial part in today's business world. People that have data skills have the best chance of career success. At Promotable, we help professionals take their careers to the next level. From analytics basics to more advanced tools such as SQL, Tableau, and Python. Promotable utilizes industry experts who focus on teaching in-demand skills that empower career opportunities, providing flexible class schedules to working professionals with the affordable training they need. Invest in your career and become promotable. Promotable, data-driven career development. www.promotable.io.
Awesome. And so tonight we have Analytics in Uncertain Times, a COVID-19 case study hosted by Jigant. He's the manager of Global Market Insights and Analytics at Abbott. And I'll pass it over to you, Jigant. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Eric. Let me know when you can see my screen.
All right, we can see you.
Let me bring it in the presentation mode. Okay, here we go. Thanks, Eric and Aaron, for this opportunity. It's good to be back and share through Promotable. I think it's a great platform for like-minded people to come together and learn from each other. I think I am learning through these sessions as much as anyone else who's in the listening mode right now. But great. Thanks again for inviting me. Welcome, everyone. Good evening, good morning, whichever part of the world you're in right now, or whatever mental states. As you can see, I have a special coronavirus haircut. My wife finally gave up my third request to cut my hair, and this is the result of that. And she's like, okay, I think you should go ahead with this one. It's going to be a long time. We'll all be home. So since coronavirus was recent, I thought it's all obviously good to share some of the learnings I've had, my colleagues have had, and my team has had about analytics and giving insights during the time of coronavirus. Again, this is something new. I won't call myself an expert, but it's always good to know that some things that we have learned, tried to apply, things that we found were not that great to apply. Some things we found were like, okay, this is definitely giving us good results. And I thought it's always good to share. So within Abbott, I lead the global market research and analytics for Abbott Transfusion Medicine, which is a business unit within Abbott, dedicated to serving blood and plasma screening centers. So we have been doing this internal share, reapply, and learning sessions on a weekly basis with our other business units within Abbott, and I have learned a lot from that. And that is where this stems from, and I thought it's always good to pick up this topic. I'll be happy to hear your thoughts during and after this session as well. I'll be leaving my coordinates for you to reach out to. And it's because this thing is probably going to build on, and there are still a lot of questions that need to be answered. With that said, let's dive straight into it. If at any point, Eric and Aaron, if you feel like my audio isn't working or something's wrong, just feel free to stop me there. I know this is a little different session than in-person session we had last time. Great. So let's begin by just understanding 3 pillars. And I call them 3 pillars and then mention 4. And the reason is that I believe the 4th one sits as the peak or the dome on top of these 3 pillars that we need to ask ourselves. So I want to go back to basics. We will be answering some questions and specifically for coronavirus. For all the folks who are either on commercial side, non-analytics side, or part of the analytics and insights team, there's certain questions we are all being asked. And I generally have put those questions in 3 buckets. We started getting questions about what is going to be the forecast or the forecast on this coronavirus. Like, how big do you think this thing is going to be? And when is it going to impact us? I remember early March, late February, early March, those questions started coming in. By mid-March or April, the questions turned into, can you quantify the impact in volume and value dollars for me that it's going to have, and by what date? So start forecasting now on my own business. And third question that we have recently seen in May, a lot of people are asking is, we've already started reaching out to our customers. This is what we're communicating. Is this the right thing to communicate? What's the strategy for us going into this pandemic? Because we don't see this going away in the near future. And I'm preempting, and these are some of the things that we're working on right now, are the 4th questions on which I think the 4th bucket is going to become is about, hey, all this is done and said, what's the strategy of coming out of it? So how do we put closure to this whole topic? Now, if you look at all these journey of 4 questions, all of this has happened within a time frame of 2 to 3 months. And that, in case of, if you're on the commercial side, on business analytics side, on corporate side, is a very short period of time. Within a short period, you're going through a long life cycle, all compressed and crunched into a small window of time. And hence I said, okay, if we're going to talk about this as a case study of answering these questions, let's go back to the basic pillars, because traditionally when we enter a marketing problem or a commercial problem, we have time, a little bit of time on our side. We do have some historical precedents on our side to look at. We do have some methodological models to compare ourselves against. We have best practices in the market. We have none right now. So we need to start from scratch. So if you're answering any of these questions, so I'm trying to start without being a little more specific on the question. Let's start in asking ourselves, are we even ready of pressure testing ourselves and answering all these key business questions through data and analytics in this environment? So have we got the right sources of data? Can these sources and metrics be trusted? This we have seen both on political and commercial side. The numbers we are seeing, is it the true number? What is the real impact that one's going to see? So whatever data sources we are getting, whether it's from World Health Organization or CDC or FDA, or you even now have even third-party sources where JP Morgan and Frost and Sullivan are sharing numbers. And each is sharing numbers in a different manner. Some are sharing numbers on tests, recovery, geographical expansion, impact on business, closure of business, on number of people still employed, and different metrics that are coming in. And those numbers do vary. So you need to understand, are we able to trust these numbers? If I'm going to build a model and I'm going to answer any of these questions on analysis, can these sources and metrics be trusted to be true in future? That means, are we going to continue seeing the trend, or are we going to trust some number? And I don't want to pinpoint, but there have been some red faces in the market who have found themselves to, retract some of the numbers that they gave in. They retraced their numbers to the extent that there was this funny number I saw, Sweden showing the number of deaths movement from previous day as -1. So I was like, okay, probably Thor came in and someone dead came back, and it realized that the way they're tracing their numbers wasn't correct. So they recalibrated their numbers and the death toll went down by 1. Although a small incident, but it really makes you question whether you've got the right data sources. Next is, I want to talk a little bit about methodology. The first question we always asked ourselves when we were building models, whether it's for forecasting, understanding impact, calculating total available market dollar value, anything, am I overcomplicating my technique? This is not the time to play with, I would make a very bold statement to say, not a time to play with very advanced analytics, overcomplicate things that require a more robust data set. Rather, we should try and simplify things. Now, when I say that, it needs to balance. So the second question you need to ask is my model too linear? You just won't want to take up one data point and just draw a line on top of it and say, oh, this is the linear graph it's going to follow, right? It's a simple time series. So you want to strike a balance between the two. And the way you can do that is making sure that you've included all fields of influence. And I will dedicate a slide just talking about what are these fields of influence and how can you even find proxies for these fields of influence. Next is reading results. Once you get these, can you explain your results very simplistically? And that's important because you need to make sure that they're not a list of long assumptions. So a bad answer is, the answer is this, but, and after that but, you list 5 or 6 things. It's good to list them if it's really required, but try and say, can you give a more simplified answer that is still true? okay? And the visualization that you're showing, the results that you're putting in front of someone, is it self-evident? Is this the chart showing, or does it require a lot of background and context? Then then probably we are overcomplicating things. We are not sure of the answers we are getting. Again, finally, telling the story. I always harp on this. Numbers don't simply just make sense in themselves. We need to make sure that we are answering the business questions in one single sentence. And ultimately, can you aid the decision-making process? Are we informing versus stating? I see a lot of reports again coming in the market, and I'm happy to share some of the sources that I've been following. Do a lot of statement work, right? A lot of people sharing dashboards, tracking, COVID-related numbers, but a lot of them are stating things instead of informing us. And one of the differences I would give is someone saying the rate of growth of cases in at one point of time, I'm quoting something from March, is very high in Europe compared to Asia Pacific. So we think we need to start focusing. So we need to start focusing on was missing. They simply said that. Now the challenge was, because they stated the fact at that moment in time, they simply took that metric and included that in their model, and they predicted that Europe will continue to decline, and that's where we must be spending our resources in terms of should the business be focusing there, how are we training our salespeople, versus informing is we expect you bring in a forecasting element as well as and say Europe is growing rapidly in cases of coronavirus. Asia is bound to catch up within the next 4.5 weeks. Hence, we should be making use of this time that the coronavirus cases are less, and get your sales team and your orders and your dispatch and your distribution or your raw materials in place in next 4 weeks. That is more informative in reading versus just making simple statements. Simple statements are often misleading. So we need to make sure that even after running sometimes we run like very sophisticated analytics, and ultimately we just quote numbers and state numbers, and that's not helping anyone. With that said, let's get a little deeper into it. I've tried to cover some of these questions beforehand as well. I know some of you might say, hey, Jent, isn't analytics always about uncertainty? You're still giving a confidence interval on any number you're quoting. But the challenge with coronavirus situation for us was that there is no historical data, right? Accuracy is growing and changing every day. I gave you examples for that. We have no knowledge of seasonality, and we have seen people talking about, oh, this has reached a peak. No, it has not reached the peak. This is the second wave, so it's a 2-peak distribution, and all those numbers are like we're learning on the go. So there isn't actually one true measure that we have. So how accurate is the data? Do we really know the data in depth? Just having the data isn't sufficient. Do we need to start from scratch, or do we just play with the methodologies we have in hand? Here's one learning I had. We decided not to change any of our methodologies, either for forecasting or for measuring our TAM impact, or methodologies for calculating average prices. We did not change the methodology that had been in place. And the reason is that because we're learning on the go, it's easier to bring in another set of variables into the mixture and understand their impact, even if that analysis has to be done in isolation, right? You do that separately and bring that plus or minus to your forecast later. But that was a big learning, because we did not want this situation for us to go back and teach the entire organization about a new methodology. Hey, we are reshaping, these numbers look different because of XYZ. No, we didn't want to do that. So we just use the existing methodology so that everybody understands. A methodology is as good as the consumers tend to understand it, right? If they're not understanding it, that methodology might as well not be any good. And because we're running against time, we decided to stick with it. Reading results, do old assumptions still hold true? This is one big learning I think we need to have. A lot of times when we're doing analytics, we tend to pull in variables which we think will have an impact. Now, let me say, for example, for forecasting, We might use a time series. We might see the market growth, how the industry has been growing, how my own share has been growing. You might also include variables such as how much is my marketing spend, how much is my competition spending relative to me. I'm assuming retails are not going to be open in certain countries. E-commerce is the only source of sales, etc., etc. But beyond these, what we're actually assuming to be true is your manufacturing, your sales and operations, right? You're assuming that your sales rep will be able to deliver the said volume at a retail store at the right time. You're assuming that the shelves are going to be filled. You are assuming that the raw material for production is going to hit on time, that you're not going to hit a wall where you realize that your manufacturing saying, hey, we're working at 70% of our capacity that we should. So the demand may be there, but we won't be able to put stuff on shelf or for like 30% of what it should be there. And that's a big learning. So a lot of our old assumptions, we had to go back and check the variables going into our different models. Is it still going to hold true? Now, I've been taking a lot of analytical examples. Let's take up some simple market research examples as well. This was a good time. And then again, I'm going to share an example because I'm from a very B2B industry. Let me pick up another example from B2C. One of my colleagues who works in the industry of kitchen appliances shared with me. And he said, we assumed that this is the right time to think of a mid-tier product, right? Not something premium, because people are going to have hit on their wallets, their level of spending. So this is a good time to test. But your idea of going in the market and asking people for responses, for doing surveys, getting insights from those metrics is highly, highly susceptible to their current mindset. Everybody's at home, the consumption patterns have changed. People are cooking a lot. So even those people who were buying frozen food and stuffing their freezer with it and just heating it in the microwave are now cooking and giving responses. So you need to start checking your assumptions again of what you're reading, how you're reading results, and whether you should take it with a pinch of salt or a fistful of salt. We need to add those variables back in. And lastly, about storytelling, again, can I give one answer instead of three? I would prefer to give one answer, but later in one of my slides, I'll show you where I talk about that I actually propose giving three answers instead of one. So this is where it is. So I just wanted to bring some of these ideas about data methodology, how we're reading results, and these without quoting numbers. Moving ahead, here's my, let's say, 2 cents in terms of how I've tried to structure my thoughts. And I always love doing that. I did the same kind of 2x2 grid in my previous presentation with Promotable as well, where I say that there's an implementation focus as one dimension, how accurate you need to be, right? Is it forecasting versus more software understanding? So you have a subjective orientation, versus an objective orientation. Then you have a more strategic focus. Are you more customer centric or are you more revenue focused? So it's value versus volume that you're trying to match, right? What am I doing? Whose problem am I solving? Am I solving my problem because my sales are going down? Or at this moment, do I really need to come up with something else that's really focused? Okay, my consumer is most impacted. I need to think of them, and they both go hand in hand. It's not like it's either an or. Both need to go hand in hand. But I'll give you a simple example. You will be in a revenue centric mode right now if you are in an essential service, right? Because you're an essential service. You know that people will be buying your stuff, but they might be buying it lesser in volumes, right? So revenue is impacted. People need you. That need is very well defined. For in our case, it's blood and screening. So we know that it's an essential service, that blood and plasma screening. So it's an essential service. They need to do it, but volumes are impacted because there are less number of donors in the market. The same is with telecom services. Same is with consumables for like personal care that you're going to. Some of them, the demand may go high. You're not able to supply as much. Toilet paper being one of the crazy examples, but that's where your revenue centric would lie. Customer centric is where I would say a lot of non-essential products would be. And if you are in this audience, anybody's in a startup, a smaller organization, this is where you need to focus yourself on now. It's my 2 cents that this is the right time to actually start focusing on what your customers' needs are, try and understand them better, try and see if the needs have changed during this corona, and will they stay in that changed mode later after this whole pandemic is over, is what you need to focus on, because it won't simply just go back as an essential once this whole pandemic is over. So this is a great time to do that. So now let's see if you are in which mode and what kind of analytics you can actually look at. So if you're in a customer-centric mode, and you're having a subjective orientation, market research and surveys are a good thing to do. Again, take it with a pinch of salt. I think this is an excellent time to do in-home user tests. It's a great time to get consumption data. So if you're working for any CPG organization, personal care products, app usage, digital stuff, this is the right time to go and understand things, right? Because some of those things still remain the same way. You're not using more shampoo just because you're home. So if you're trying to understand how people are doing, people have a lot of time on their hand. So if you're trying to do more surveys in which you have more detailed answers needed, sometimes we call them diary placements. There are different terminologies in the market. They call them occasions books. Some people call them diary placements. You actually ask consumers to fill in their daily routines regarding one particular aspect of their life. Probably what they're eating, what they're using, how are they working from home. IKEA is spending a lot on this, trying to understand how people are working from home. This is a great place to be. But if you're in an objective orientation and you're still looking at customers, positioning and communication, how can I understand my customers better? But you need really good numbers. Go with more ensemble methods like traditional forecasting. Try and mix a few things, look at numbers. So you might want to use your sales data with some of the market survey data and mix the two and bring insights, just to give it a more quantitative flavor. That's a good place to be. Now, if you're in the revenue-centric zone right now, and with essential services, and you're just trying to have a subjective orientation, correlated models from near semester historical models is good. I will pause on this. I know this is a heavy loaded statement. In the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about it, from where this statement comes, and what it means. I'm going to spend about 2 to 3 minutes on this. So I'll pause here. The main thing I want to talk about is these propensity models. If we are revenue centric and you are really going into objective orientation, we need to start giving answers in terms of probabilities. What's the propensity of one or two things to happen? So if propensity for something to go high, medium, low, which direction is it going to move? As I said that I'm going to eat my own words. As I said, are we giving one answer versus three? Because we cannot give one answer, can we give a range of answers? Can we let our stakeholders and senior leadership know about and make, and together like a business, make a decision in a range of probabilities, like this might happen, that might happen. And the good thing about this is that it allows you to refresh it on real time or make decisions on the go as and when it's happening. So you might decide on things about your supply, your demand, impact on the business. A lot of public listed companies need to give forecast to Wall Street, and they're a lot been using propensity models. So if you look at reports from IMF, you look at reports from JP Morgan, McKinsey, BCG, most of them have been giving us scenarios. They're saying the worst case scenario, the best case scenario, and the range in between, and they're giving us scales around it. And that's the way to go in this. The best as an analytics professional you can do is narrow that range. As narrow as you can bring it, the best, I would say, our job has been done. I would have loved to share some of my own results here, but because of like it's last moment, I cannot get the approval to share exact numbers. But we have been able to bring it down to a near plus minus 10% range. In one metric we were about at 15, but it's good that way. So that's one way to go in this scenario of COVID. I've just numbered them in terms of how you should go about. I would say we should start with some, we started with some revenue centric. We were looking at some customer centric market research surveys. We're looking at some ensemble models. Now we're thinking about something around propensity. I think we're in decent range in giving a range. So following up, as I said, I'll talk a little bit more about some new stuff here. So as I said, can we find proxies? Can we find adjacent models or historical symmetries that we can fix in our stuff? Now, if I don't have data of how, I don't have historicals on how the news about the pandemic and the way the pandemic has spread, how is it going to impact my business? How is it going to move? Can I look at proxy models? Can I look at financial models? Sensex is a very bad example, but can I look at how some of the public players in the industry have been reacting to Wall Street? How, by what percentage are they decreasing their revenues? How are they planning to, like in the details, let's say Standard & Poor's reports, how are they talking about decrease in their sales that are going to take place, volumes is going to take place? You can pick up numbers and metrics and inputs from there that can be substituted in your own model. I'm not saying it's always true, but there are certain assumptions we can make about certain things. So Wall Street forecasts are also good there. Consumer consumption forecasts. So if you are in a B2C industry, consumer consumption reports are actually really good. I know Zoom and some of these have been, Google Meet have been sharing their daily usage numbers on a very frequent basis. So if you're in that app and digital tech industry, you will have numbers available in terms of usage and all. And you can use proxy if you don't have your own. And that does give you some historical cadence, even not like too much of data, but it does give you data. Talk about real-time updates. Here's one. I just want to show you one example of this GDP growth outlook that came from IMF report. And you see that they shared 3 scenarios. So they talk about a severe scenario, severe pandemic. They talked about a gradual way, and another one somewhere in the middle that's the medium range of it. And then they give you 3 scenarios. And what I was talking about narrowing the range is, how confident are you that this range is going to be true? If you're going to give me a range of this and way below, it's of no use. You're saying it could be anywhere between this. The narrower you can get, the better. It looks big on this chart because it starts at 1 and it's pretty narrow. Otherwise, the range is pretty good. So this is another way of showing forecasts that where you can give ranges to play in. And I think as time goes by, you can improve upon it. Reading market sentiments, look at reports that are coming out of kind of like Nielsen, IQVIA, who are doing a lot of healthcare professional and consumer reports of how people are using, for example, we were really focused on how many people are going to give blood donations and plasma donation, how that number decreased. Some of these metrics come from a lot of market research, publicly available information from the websites. For example, we know that all the blood drives in US have been canceled until July. But in the same report, CDC in one of the webinars mentioned, hey, 80% of blood donations that come from blood drive. So we know that if historically these many donations have come on a monthly basis annually, we're expecting an 80% decline because those drives are not happening. Now, on top of that, there are certain regular donors who will be coming in. They will be doing campaigns. So you need to then go back and take adjacent domains and see what has been the threshold level that's always maintained, and take up a proxy and put it in there and say that at least these many people will continue giving blood and will happen. And we were able to give a number around that. So you've been using market research as well, and trends and projections, as I talked about, you can keep revising them on a regular basis. More frequent basis is always good. If you were doing something on a monthly basis, doing it on a weekly basis would make sense at this time. Even if you're doing it, that's why I said, don't overcomplicate things, because overcomplication may take a little bit of time. But if you're increasing frequency, can you do more linear stuff? With that said, this is where I want to just talk about my learnings, what I've done. I've thrown a lot of jargon around. Feel free to reach out to me in case you felt that you understood half of the sentence I said there. I'm happy to talk about more in detail. Catch up. Let's cut a coffee conversation on the side, maybe even on over email. But happy to talk more about it. But before I end and take my last 2 minutes, I want to talk a little bit about busting some myths. And I did this last time as well, and I want to do it again. The first myth I want to bust is all analytical models are true, and I don't need to elaborate on it. I know, for example, the White House has been switching models every left and right. Kingdom, the models that they have projected are way like the standard deviation is too high in both of those. So not all analytical models are true. Just because you're getting some number which is high or low is true. You need to go back to the basics that I shared in my first slide and ask again to yourself those three key pillar things, like, is the data correct, is the methodology correct, am I understanding, I'm reading the results correct, and only then come to a story. I can buy reports from third parties. This is one of the first things a lot of commercial leaders do, because once they reach out to analytics team and we are struggling with a lot of these things, we tend to go, hey, can I buy a certain report from a well-known consulting company who's going to write a number on top of something? Even they would be doing what you are doing. If you don't have access to data, even they don't. There's no repository of really cool data that exists on a pandemic that has never happened in recent history. So they may pick up numbers from the SARS pandemic, but it has not been the same. The journey of this virus has not been the same with that virus. Even in its geographical expansion, the impact it has had on the economy is not the same. So you cannot make assumptions there and do that. I would say that defeats the purpose of you being an analytics person, of buying third-party reports and using their data and their models. I think each business is unique. We need to, even if it's a simple Excel model you're building, make sure you give it a try and triangulate. Maybe if you get the third party, someone's given it to you, triangulate your numbers with them. If you agree, fine. If you don't agree, find out where your assumptions differ. Data drives the discussion. I would say it's the other way around. Make sure what your questions are. As I gave you those 4 key questions from the beginning that each business is going to ask within this very short time frame, all the way from what the impact is going to be to how are we phasing out of coronavirus. Make sure that you are not just simply using the data and spitting out results, but make sure that the discussion that we're having, how can whatever limited data and models we have can do that. Again, this is the same myth I had said last time, and I'm happy to see that this holds true. 2 + 2 is always 4 is not true when it comes to merging data sets. So as I said, and this is the last thing I want to explain. In any analytical model, here's my 2 cents, and again, I would love to hear if someone has a differing view on it, that you might bring in some coronavirus or proxy variables into your, for the example, this is a case study. As I said, this is a case in point. So I'm going to talk about my case study of, like, if we are doing forecasting and if we are bringing a certain variable in, that variable cannot be directly merged into your model. You may have to do things in isolation. You may have to say, okay, this is my forecasting model. That's the coronavirus model. That, let me calculate if that has an impact on the number of blood donors in a country, then subtract it from my model. So you're running 2 models and bringing an output of 1 model into the other. I'm not simply merging the 2 data sets. One of the most simple examples is people running correlations. They're running correlations left and right. And media agencies are number 1 in them in doing that and saying, if this is going high, that should also go high. Correlation does not mean causation. I think most people on this call would know that. It's an obvious statement. So we need to be very cautious of doing that. You can not always merge data sets together and do a modeling. So test even that hypothesis. With that, I'll rest my case. I'm sharing my coordinates with you, both on LinkedIn and my email. Feel free to reach out in case you have any questions. I'm happy to have questions right now as well. With that, I'll pause. Over to you, Eric. You can take it from here.
Perfect. Well, hey, thank you very much for that. That was awesome and informative as usual. Let's see. So yeah, essentially anyone that is watching that has any questions, this is the open Q&A portion. The best place to put these questions would be in the YouTube chat. If there's like a couple people randomly in the Zoom as well. So if you are in that, then you can feel free to throw something in that chat. But in general, the YouTube chat is where we're looking at. I'll wait like a minute or two here to see if anything pops up, just because there's a bit of a delay, I know, on the stream as well. Alrighty. So yeah, we'll just hang on here for a few minutes and see if we have anything. Again, we're also definitely going to show, I mean, you're going to show your information here too. So if someone has a more longer winded question or comment, I'm sure they can just email that to you as well.
Yeah, that would be great.
Correct. Awesome. Perfect. Well, yeah, we'll hang out for another 2 or 3 minutes here and see if we got anything popping up in the comments. Otherwise, just feel free to contact Gian directly. All right. Well, we will wrap this thing up. Again, thank you everyone for coming and watching. I know this was a little bit different than usual doing it through this YouTube live stream, but it looks like we're going to start doing it this way in general. If anyone has any questions and they couldn't figure out how to ask those, feel free to just message directly, as the information is on the screen there. And you guys can get into a little more.
Yeah, this happens. I know we didn't get questions on the YouTube link, but guess what? I was just looking at my cell phone and I've got like 16 requests on LinkedIn to connect, and 4 of them mentioned promotable talk. So, so I'm like, okay, so pretty sure they're there. They may have a long-winded question, but I know last time also conversations lasted longer and they're much more fruitful. So happy to do that as well.
Exactly.
That's great. Thanks.
Definitely. Well, hey, thank you very much, Ant, and I appreciate it. And thanks again for coming back and doing another talk for us.
Great.
All righty. Hey, thanks, man.